Greetings there, Groovers. How are you doing? Welcome to Full Record Jacket with Phil and Ben. Except you may have noticed there's no Ben. This is because, don't worry, he's all right. He's not in a really bad way or anything, but he's had a bit of a bug. He's had a bit of a, I don't know what you call it, bug, flu, nasty thing. Confined him to bed for a while, and he felt pretty rough. He felt rougher than 10 bears rubbing you down with sandpaper whilst in a life raft on a stormy night on the Pacific Ocean. It was that rough. So that's why I'm here solo. But Ben does like me doing solo shows. And I think on this one, he won't object too much because I'm going to be talking about a band that I know he does like. We're talking about a band that came to prominence back in, I think, 1968 was when the world first heard of them, although they had been playing together under other names before that. They were pretty road-hardened when they had their first hit with a version of a song that had originally been done by Dale Hawkins back in the late 50s. Their first song was Susie Q. That was the one that got them on the radio in America. Can you think who this band is so far? How are you doing on this one? They also had hits including Proud Mary and Bad Moon Rising, which was in, I think, 1969. So you possibly guessed now, if you know anything about classic rock, that I'm talking about Creedence Clearwater Revival. Now, this is the cover of Chronicle, the compilation, which is the one that got me into them. And I think it's the one that, for many people, got them into the band. Just an overview, really, of their greatest hits, effectively, and some album tracks from the... I think they only made 5 albums as the original lineup. In fact, I think there's never any kind of reunion for Creedence because there was a lot of bad blood. So that's why I'm wearing the John Fogerty style shirt, which I put on specifically to do this video. But the reason I'm talking about them is because the other night on Netflix, I was flicking around, as you do on Netflix, and I saw that I, some months ago, had bookmarked Creedence Clearwater Revival live at the Albert Hall. And I'd never got round to watching it. And I must admit, I didn't really know the full detail of what this was. Well, I can tell you, I'm a couple of years late catching up with the box set, which for me is, that's not bad to be only 2 years behind. And back in autumn 2022, there was a release of not only a new audio of their live at the Albert Hall recording, but also a documentary film narrated by Jeff Bridges. Now, there's a kind of a connection there because Jeff Bridges, of course, plays the Dude in that Coen Brothers film, The Big Lebowski, and I think the Dude is a Creedence fan, and I'm pretty sure that the song Run Through the Jungle appears in that film, if I'm remembering correctly. It's many years since I've seen it. But and I guess Jeff Bridges himself, being a bit of an old hippie, is probably a fan of them as well. So he narrates it. And the footage apparently was filmed by the BBC at the time for a documentary, which was never shown. There was, I think, some kind of legal wrangling went on, and the BBC's footage stayed in the can for decades, effectively. And it's just been resurrected into this documentary. So you get about, I think, about half an hour or so, maybe 45 minutes, of history of the band, which really tells you how they got going and everything. That's quite interesting. And then there are some interviews with the members of the band as they tour Europe in 1969 and 1970. It's all shot in colour, and it's quite interesting to see this group of young, I think they were all from California, arriving in Europe for the first time, seeing it all and their impressions of it. And it all culminates with the full recording of their set at the Royal Albert Hall, which I think took place, I may be wrong about this, I think it was February 1970. Don't quote me on that, but it was 1970 anyway. And it's all in colour, a little bit grainy, the film, but it looks good. And the audio was restored by Giles Martin, who, of course, is the son of George Martin and has made his name with all those remixes of the Beatles. And he's done a good job on this, I have to say. It's it's not the most hi-fi quality recording, but it's not bad. It's pretty raw and direct, and I think Giles Martin and the team have done a very good job of preserving that and just giving it a little bit of oomph. And it sounded, for me, on my Sennheiser headphones while I was watching it, sounded absolutely fine to me. And just a note about this, that there was apparently a Creedence Clearwater Revival Albert Hall concert live album that came out in 1980, but it was not this recording. In fact, it was actually retitled because they discovered that the recording was actually from Oakland, California, and not from the Royal Albert Hall. So that's a separate show. But this one obviously brings back the genuine audio from that show. It's all synced up well. I didn't notice any missing frames or anything from the concert, so it's very, very good. And I have to say, it's a very good performance. I think it's probably, the band pretty much at their peak. You can see how they interacted with each other. You've got, of course, John Fogerty on lead vocals. He was pretty much the leader of the band by that point, although his brother, Tom Fogerty, who was older than John Fogerty, had originally been the leader of the group in its early incarnations. And then John Fogerty, being obviously a talented songwriter and the better vocalist, ended up becoming the main man of the band. You've got Stu Cook on bass, who's quite a melodic kind of bass player. Doug Clifford on drums. He was the one who was known as Cosmo, hence the album title Cosmo's Factory. And Tom Fogerty on rhythm guitar. Tom Fogerty's a kind of a fairly rudimentary rhythm guitarist, but he kind of just sets a bit of a rhythm, and he sets a bit of a groove. And they've really got sort of two styles, Creedence Clearwater Revival. They've got their slightly slower songs, which they play with this sort of, they get a groove going, and they kind of quite hypnotic. Or they just all out rock, like they do on something like Traveling Band. So, and they pretty much, they made about 5 albums. They made 3 albums in 1969. 3 albums came out in that one year. And in that year, they actually outsold the Beatles, apparently. Sold more albums and singles than the Beatles. They really came out of nowhere in a way, in terms of the public, Creedence. They sort of exploded onto the scene in 1968. And by 1972, it had all dissolved in acrimony. In fact, some claim that the acrimony began, or maybe it didn't even begin there, but it certainly reared its head at the end of this Albert Hall performance, because apparently the audience, who were visibly enthusiastic on this film, gave a 10 or maybe even some say 15-minute ovation, and were really clamouring for more. I think the band had played for just 45 or 47 minutes, not that long by today's standards. But John Fogerty refused to go back out and do an encore, and that obviously, I think, created a little bit of a disagreement among the band, and things didn't get any better between them from then on. So they really were, a short-lived band, but they burned very brightly for a short time. And if you like that sort of straight-ahead American traditional rock music, rooted in old school rock and roll and a bit of blues and a bit of a country influence as well, you can do a lot worse than listen to Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ben likes to listen to them quite a bit. I like to listen to them, I still do, and I can always enjoy them. They're kind of a band that I tend to sort of maybe playlist a bit, don't really go through the albums album by album. I tend to sort of jump around with them. Maybe that's because I first all got into them anyway from a compilation. But all the albums, with the possible exception of Mardi Gras, are worth a listen. So do that. If you've got access to Netflix, hop on there and watch Creedence Clearwater Revival live at the Albert Hall. If you've got any time this Christmas, let me know what you think, and pop a thing in the comments below. And if you've got any opinions on Creedence Clearwater Revival, I and Ben would love to read them. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I'll be back with another one very soon. In the meantime, keep on toogling.